You're listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Comic Crusaders, culture connoisseurs, animation aficionados, and believers in big cinematic moments. Today, we are stepping into something biblical, but make it blockbuster, baby, because we are talking about a film that's already shattered expectations and smashed through the box office with over 80 million and counting. The animated phenomenon from Angel Studios called David. And who do we have in the building? A true veteran of stage and screen, a craftsman, a performer who understands the power of voice, presence, and prophecy. A man who stepped into the sandals of one of history's most powerful spiritual figures. A man, he made him feel like human, real, and alive. Now, he is the voice of the prophets Samuel and David, the talented, the seasoned, the powerhouse performer himself, Brian Stivale, baby. How you doing?
Well, after that intro, how could anybody be bad, man? Honestly, I'm going to take that with me everywhere I go. I'm going to clip it and soundbite it. That'll be my intro. I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on your show. It's really great to be with you.
Well, thank you for coming on through and hanging out with us today to talk about, a bit about your journey, your career, and of course, your epic role in David. And folks, if you don't know about this, that tight little film that dropped, it's killing it. It is fire. It's connected with people, and I'm gonna make this easy for you guys as we chit chat. You see that QR code right there? You go ahead and snap that, right? Take it straight to Angel. You're gonna be watching, and checking out what David's all about, trailers and whatnot, and seeing, my man Brian do his thing. So Brian, let's step into it now. When you first got the call about David, did you immediately think this is historic, or okay, how do I not mess up the prophet over here?
Yes, both. This is an epic film, and when you see it in its final production state, in theaters or even streaming, which I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it's still premiering all over the world, but here in the States, domestically in North America, we're out of the theaters. But it is an epic experience. And when I got the audition call for it, just even reading the description of what Phil Cunningham and Brent Dawes and Sunrise Animation and Angel Studios wanted to accomplish with it, it was overwhelming, because it made me think immediately of The Prince of Egypt and the power that movie had. Ooh, yeah. Because it was both biblical, epic, but it was also just really great, entertaining, inspiring animation with great music that still stands. And I saw that in the midst of the audition process. I thought, my God, I want to be a part of this. And then I saw their proof of concept, because they built an original version of it, which is very different from the film, but still stands the test of time. And when I saw that, I thought, they're going to do it. No matter what, I have to be a part of this. And thankfully, and not by accident, every bit of my personal background goes into that role, in getting to that role. I teach Hebrew roots, biblical archaeology. I'm actually about a few days away from going to Italy to go and visit some sites there for some preliminary for that we're doing. And nice. I do a lot with Israel. My wife and I and our kids lived in Jerusalem for 2 years as residents, and we are Goodwill ambassadors, official Goodwill ambassadors to the state of Israel. So we advocate a lot about that, and we talk a lot about what's really going on there, because we live there and we're friends with everybody. Jew, Arab, secular alike, it doesn't matter. They're beautiful people. And so we've had a great relationship with that. So we keep the feasts. Like tonight, we'll have Shabbat at our house. We have 20 people coming over to celebrate Purim, which is essentially like Jewish Halloween, celebrating the story of Esther. So this is all a part of my background to begin with. I sing in Hebrew.
Really? Okay.
I do Hebrew prayers. I'm ordained. We have a congregation of people that meet and we teach Hebrew
That's
roots.
good.
So that was
Okay,
part of my background to begin with.
Yeah, I'm unaware.
Voice actor, and it was perfect for David.
I'm unawares. You got me there. Like really,
All
like
right.
a Hebrew Halloween. That's kind of cool. Like what?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not
that.
necessarily what I would attribute it like on a purely scriptural biblical level.
Yeah,
It's not at all what it is.
Kind of. Yeah, no, but
It's
kind
a
of.
celebration of Esther, but it kind of turned into that because everybody dresses up and it's a big party.
That's cool.
And,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
so
cool.
but that part of my life was really elementally already there. So when the audition came along, I recognized, you said, the weight of it all. That, you know, these are big sandals to fill, as you said. And
Absolutely.
Samuel's one of the most primary and most well-known prophets, and specifically for this part of his life with Saul and David. And that's what the movie takes on. And I was really privileged to be able to play the part, man.
I dig it. Now, you worked across stage and screen. Now, how does voice acting challenge you differently than being like physically on set?
They're different animals, really. It's interesting. I love voiceover, to be honest with you. I love working on stage. I love working on screen. Started my career on stage, worked on screen, and throughout it had sporadic moments where I do voiceover, and those were kind of joyous moments because it takes you out of your body. You don't use your physical, but you do use your physical body for gesticulation and all the efforts that you're doing and everything. But it's different than being blocked into movements on stage or in a film and being beholden to your physical nature being the first point of contact people have with you. So on screen is very, it's body oriented. It's carnal. People see your body first. So Hollywood also puts you in a box based on that, no matter how gifted you are. Whereas voiceover really is an open world. It gives you a vast opportunity. I play aliens. I play all sorts of different international ethnicities and different accents. And, it really takes the roof off of it. And so they're very different animals in that regard. I still am trained on a base level as a Meisner trained actor from New York City. And I got my training in New York. I worked on Broadway. That's how I met my wife, doing Broadway tours. And so I did enough stage to recognize its importance and its value. And even that plays into voiceover because when you perform a show 8 days a week, 8 performances a week, you're really getting into a groove of making it new for yourself every time. And you need to do that with VO. You need to be ready to go on an improvisational level. So while they're different, they kind of play into each other at the same time. Being an actor is an actor. And I always say that the difference between being a voice actor and just another voice is the actor part. So part of my journey has always been coming to this point where now I'm utilizing my real toolbox, but on the most, the purest possible platform I can.
Wonderful. Now let me ask you, let's go back talking about Samuel, because he is a prophet, but prophets are also human, right? How did you balance authority with vulnerability?
That's an excellent question, because that was really in the direction and the writing, the way that they approached Samuel, because you can approach him from a variety of perspectives. And if you're going pure, straight line biblical on it, House of David from the Wonder Project and Greg Laurie and those guys did an excellent job of portraying what the scriptural is on Samuel. And it covers every little bit of what his journey was alongside David. But it's violent and it's visceral and it's painful and it doesn't make for a good kids movie or an animation. It also needed to reach a younger audience with the understanding that the only real physical representation you have of God as a figure in this movie is through Samuel as his prophet. And so when they approached writing Samuel and directing him, when I did all of my work, it was always with that undergirding of him being a father figure, an uncle, someone familiar and loving and trustworthy, that just his presence is comforting. And that's why it's important in the movie when you hear, I call it Obi-Wan Kenobiing, because if you're no longer in a picture, your voice is and you ghost back up. I'm like, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah. But there's those moments where my voice will come back up in these key moments of either darkness or light in the movie, and they have gravity because of the way they approached it, because it's the nearest to the voice of God that you'd hear in the movie. And so the way they approached it was it had a spiritual weight to it because of understanding who he was, what he was there to do, and how that played into God's economy. But also it really touched into the human aspect of him being like a big grandpa, a big Jewish grandpa that's there to just put his hand on your shoulder and say, no, everything you're saying is right, and be confident in yourself. And I loved that aspect of it, because you could have really gone a lot of different ways with it, but because of the nature of the film and the heart of the film, I think it was exactly what they needed from him, and where they needed to take it, so that David was empowered, and you saw that, and so that little kids and adults with young hearts could see this movie and be uplifted in the same way.
And it does that. It's wonderful, because again, David has crossed over 80 million, at the box office. So I mean, for you, Brian, did you expect this? Kind of.
It's interesting. Yes and no. Yes, on the level of, yes, just yes. There was no doubt in my mind that it was going to do well at the box office. How it would be received by the general public was questionable, because I knew that there was a very specific market that it carries weight with. Obviously a conservative market, and obviously a more faith, family driven market. But I wanted to see how the general public would respond to it, as well as an alternative to Avatar 4 and Zootopia 2. And, a lot of these big hitters were out there, and everybody was saying, and I joked about it. I said, when I got on board with it, to the very first session I had with directors in Burbank, and they were on Zoom from South Africa. That's where their studio is. My voice director, Ned Lott, was in the studio across from me, and I said, just mark my words. I see the headline now. David defeats Goliath at the box office. And that's exactly what happened opening weekend. We opened Christmas weekend to a $22 million opening, which is the largest. It's the highest grossing faith-based animation opening ever. But on top of that, just the level of competing with I have howling dogs in the background that my wife must have just done. Just competing with those big hitters, with Disney, with Pixar, with Paramount, and going up against what was essentially a Hollywood Goliath became a realized prophecy from what I had said. Because when we did that, everybody who had any kind of doubt about it, even people who lovingly had a doubt about it attached to it, that have confidence in it, anybody who had confidence in it but still was like, I don't know how Hollywood's going to receive it, I stood stalwart in it. And I got to tell you, the whole time I was going, yep, this is exactly what I expected. I actually thought we would do more in the domestic, but I really foresee it breaking 100 in the overall international. And that,
me too.
And here's the thing: money talks to Hollywood, and I think that speaks volumes about the kind of content. And if for nothing else, no matter where you stand on the level of faith, this is a great film you could take anybody to without having any expectation of being surprised with anything. But on top of that, it's so well done. It's so excellently done that it caused emergency meetings across the animation world.
And that's what I want to ask you, because again, what part of kind of Samuel's arc now? Like, you're talking about surprises in the film. What part of Samuel's arc maybe surprised you the most as an actor they presented in the film?
Honestly, none of it shocked me or surprised me. I'll tell you what surprised me was, and this is something for people to keep in mind with Hollywood work and with acting, whether it's on camera or whether you're doing VO, whatever it is, every incarnation of it. Many times you'll do material it's gorgeous, it's wonderful, it's incredible, and gets cut for whatever reason from the film. It's not because it's bad, it's because of the flow of the film or helping the storytelling. And there was an element of that with Samuel, where after David defeats Goliath, spoilers, sorry folks, everybody probably knows the metaphor by now. But after he defeats Goliath, Samuel and his pet goat are standing on the hillside over the Valley of Elah watching this all happen. And he must have had some kind of a bet with his goat, because he says, I told you. And there's a song that he starts after that, after he has a moment of prayer with God over protecting David, that is all in Hebrew. It's like the first and the other song I sing over him, the blessing that I anoint David with, again in Hebrew. And it was a really great moment, and it's still on the soundtrack if you want to hear it. It's very interesting. You can still hear what I did for the film that's on the soundtrack. They made the soundtrack because they loved the quality of it, but it didn't help the flow of the film. So when I first saw the film at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences for our Oscar screener, he wasn't there. And I just turned to my director and went, whoa, what? And he went, I know. And it was, but it wasn't even a question. It wasn't hey. It was hey, that's weird. It's on the soundtrack. How did it get in the movie? Okay, cool. Because the soundtrack means I still get royalties for it, but it not being in the movie is a non-issue. It helped the flow of the film to tell the story in a better and more facile way. And I think a lot of times directors and storytellers can get caught up in their own wannas, in their own desires to accomplish their storytelling style or the moments that are important to them that may not really edify the story. And, sometimes you need to cut the fat. And with this film, we really needed to, because it's an hour and 50 minutes. And if you tell the entire story of David and fill in all the details, every gruesome moment, every great moment, every bit and piece that's biblically there, you're looking at a mini series, a 5-hour, 6-hour mini series rather than an hour and 50-minute movie. And that's even cutting things out. So when they had to approach storytelling for David, they really had to make some choices about what they focused on and what they didn't, because he transitions from young David, played skillfully by Brandon Engman, into adult David, played again skillfully by Phil Wickham, gospel superstar. And there has to be room for that transitional time to happen, and so we dramatize a lot in the film. But I think people need to recognize that, when you're storytelling, there has to be an end in mind with the storytelling. And with Samuel, they applied him the same way as a character to really utilize the way he fits into this version of the story to edify the story.
Gotcha. Now, let's get nerdy for a second. You ready, Brian?
Yeah, let's do it.
What's your process for building a voice? Is it tone? Is it backstory first? Is it physical posture?
These are great questions, by the way. I'm so thankful that you have questions that make me think, because sometimes I go through PR stuff. To be honest with you, to be quite frank, it's really all of those things, and it depends on what it is, the project. And I work across the panoply of all voiceover. I'm blessed that I have the ability to work from industrial and commercial all the way over to video games. Video games are one of my biggest wheelhouses, and I do tons of cartoons, obviously.
Oh, nice.
But I get to do all the normal stuff in the middle. So, that's less attention and more the actual content. Like I narrate a lot of documentaries and stuff like that, and do a lot of true crime. And that's not really putting on a character. That's me just, really reading material and serving the script. But with character work, to be truthful, I approach it the same way that I would approach anything I did on stage or on screen. And that's starting with, okay, if there's a reference, what is that reference? Because directors and writers always usually have some sort of a picture in their mind or a sound in their mind of what their desire is for a specific role. I'll do that when I do audiobooks that have multiple characters. I'll cast them in my head with, actors that I love and play those actors in a me kind of way to do those parts, because there'll be so much work to do in the midst of an audiobook, because it's, sometimes 50, 60,000 words and 12 characters that you have to completely go back to. And so preparing for that's a little different. But with Samuel, it was really looking at the source material, which is the Bible first, studying that, understanding who he was, which I really already had a great baseline for, because he's, if you could have a favorite prophet, Old Testament prophet, Samuel's mine, mainly because he's pretty badass. He chops up the Amalekite king into pieces when Saul disobeys God. Saul was supposed to do that, but he does it instead, which is like not necessarily becoming a priest of God, but it was what he did.
He basically said, "Hold my beer, I got this, homie."
He was pretty hardcore, and like even unto the choice that he made. And if you think about that, I think a lot of people throw that out too with Samuel. There was a danger in him anointing a new king. There was a danger in him confronting Saul with the word of God to say, "You're fired," and because that's what happened. And so and it's heartbreaking for him, because he really wanted Saul to be the one that God chose and was correct. But it took someone with a heart after God like David, and it took Samuel identifying that in a way that nobody else could have at the time. And I love that they really worked that arc. So working with the material on that, the script was the next source material, because it's always in the script, the way that it serves the play, the movie, whatever it is best. is usually written in. It's either stylistically written into the ways that someone speaks, or their intention, or what they're actually saying. Shakespeare was wonderful with this, because when they did Shakespeare back at the Old Globe in Stratford upon Avon 100 bajillion years ago, they had classes by dialect, and that's very much Britain today, even to this day. If you were a higher class, you spoke received pronunciation, royal pronunciation, that highfalutin, the Queen's English.
Yeah.
But if you were poor, you spoke with a Cockney or an Irish accent, which was very telling of what they understood about themselves culturally. That's a whole other ball of worms. But what was interesting about that is it differentiated where they were. What with Samuel, and what they wanted from Samuel was they wanted an authentic Hebrew accent, which is interesting because this all took place when it would have been Paleo Hebrew. Modern conversational Hebrew wouldn't have been spoken the way that it is today. It would have been different. There would have been an easy mix of Aramaic in there too. So approaching it with, I wasn't going for the Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ approach with Samuel.
Okay.
I was going from this needs to be accessible while still honoring the culture and still playing into what I know in my heart, because it's part of me, is true to the character, and his sound came with it. My son made fun of me at first, because when I was first, he is in the studio for one of them. Never take your son to the studio, especially if he's an actor. No, it was great. Work, my son Ben was with me there, and he was in the A1 booth with the director Ned and our engineer. And one of the takes I did, he laughed, and I was like, "What?" And he was like, "You sound like Jewish Gusteau from." And I was like, "What?" So I was really, really mindful of that from that point forward. But I haven't told anybody that. That's actually really funny if you think about it, because there's a really close proximity to the French accent because of the resh, the R that's in it, the R, and Hebrew. They're very, very similar in that regard. So you could kind of hit it on that end. But after he said that, I was like, all right, I got to police my accent from now on to make sure I'm not like talking to a Remy the Rat.
And you kept looking at him to make sure he wasn't smiling, right?
Yeah, I did. He was like my facial barometer. But that also helped too, because there were a couple of moments like when I was recording a couple of retakes on the actual blessing. I'm a Broadway singer. I sing classical material. I sing rock and roll. I it's one of the other elements that I do. So when I approached this, my professional singer kicked into gear when I went in to record the songs. And that's problematical when you're an 800-pound prophet who's at least 80 years old, and you really want to carry authenticity in a moment that's very heavy, and that shouldn't have attention on a song. It should be about the prayer and the weight of the moment. And that's what the anointing is. And so in the takes that I did for that, my big problem with that was sounding too pretty. And so I'd get to these takes where I was exhausted in doing them, and my vocal fry, as we call it, that gritty gravel, whatever you want to, it sounds like I ate glass and hot coals for breakfast, which I do. And and there was one take that I did that I just like fell apart at the end of it and went, well, that stunk. And as an actor, I would encourage any actors watching, or anybody who wants to be an actor, don't judge yourself too quickly. It's usually that take that the directors like the most, because that's exactly what happened, because it sounded completely different from the listener's perspective than it did from me actually projecting this stuff. Even as you have cans on, you hear yourself. It's not the same as when they're in a preview booth and they have big Dolby speakers in front of them and it's booming out all these crackles and elements you don't even hear. So, my voice transformed to that stunk into like a delicious Thomas's English muffin full of nooks and crannies. So you have to trust the directors. And thank God on David, we had great producers. We had great directors, excellent writing from Brent Dawes, and the production value, if I could just touch on that for a second, the production value on the film was second to none. And the attention to detail that they gave, if you rewatch the movie, there's so many Easter eggs in this thing. There's so many little biblical secrets, little historical, archaeological secrets, and people who are in the know are going to really appreciate it. The attention to detail is exquisite.
All right. Now, you mentioned something earlier that this is your favorite prophet, if you had anyone,
Sure, yeah.
So, how did you prepare emotionally for scenes that require like spiritual intensity?
It's in me. It's in me, and I'm also, it's funny because I played Jesus for a show that we brought to Israel, but we did in Seattle for a few years running called The Kingdom. It was a musical rock opera that my wife and I wrote about the Passion, and it was rock, gospel, R&B, and hip hop. It was actually pretty
Right.
cool. The kids loved it.
Check you out.
And I played Jesus in it, believe it or not. I was younger Jesus. I was much younger. This is 20 years ago. And my wife used to call me Angry Jesus because I personally have a great passion for the gospel. I have a great passion for people. And I have a great passion for good versus evil as a just general moral compass. And so when I played him, there's always been areas. I'm Sicilian also, by the way, from New Jersey originally. So it's like, what do you do with that? There's an element of the scripture when you read it, whether it's Jesus or Samuel, when it comes to the righteousness of God, the weight of God, the direction of God, the power of God, the presence of God, where something comes out of me. It's in me, Brian. So that wasn't acting. And I got to say, I think on that level, they did a peach of a job in casting the entire cast of David, because everybody involved had that awareness, at least to the degree that they needed to for their characters, especially David, young David and adult David. And if you recall in the movie, there's a woman who plays his mother, the character Nitseva, and she's portrayed by a brilliant Israeli superstar by the name of Miri Masika. She's like Barbara Streisand today in Israel. But her emotional reach was genuine because she's tied to it. She's tied to the story. She's tied to the land. David's part of her heritage. And so, with that, the same goes for me. And when it came to those moments with Saul, especially, where there's this vast and deep hurting sadness over his betrayal to God, that you really, if you know it and you love it and it's in you, it just comes out of you. It'd be easy to understand where Samuel was in that moment. It is a paternal moment. Again, bringing it back to that father figure aspect of it where it was familiar. Saul was his first kid, but betrayed everything that he was supposed to do and got very proud and loved the throne more than he loved God. And that was the last straw. And so, they say breaking up is hard to do. This was way more than that. If you can imagine a mentor-mentee situation, or a mentor-protege, where there's love there. It's father-son because of the commitments that have been made and the path that's been taken and the great accomplishments. Because what people don't talk about is that how Saul had this great kingdom before David, before he became taken over by himself and disobeyed God. Saul was a victor for God at first. It was actually all going really well. And then season 2 happened. And it was terrible for him. He went insane because he disobeyed God. So David represented the hope in that. And the emotion for both of them was just in me.
Wonderful. I love to hear that. Now, just a couple of questions before we go, because I don't want to take too much more of your time, because I know you're out there, landing $1 million roles, bro. You landing $1 million roles, bro. Come on now, we got to make this happen for you.
I have to say, I am genuinely blessed by the type of roles that I have been privileged to get to play in my career, and this sits at the very top of the pinnacle of all of them. I was Batman for DC in 2 occasions. I've been Eddie Brock and Venom for Marvel. I've been Hagrid for the Wizarding World, and done 2 attractions for them. So it's been cool to do some of the stuff that as a fan I myself am into, because I'm a big old nerd and I love all things comic book.
Are you a Marvel DC guy?
Huh?
Are you a Marvel or a DC guy? If you,
I don't think you can fairly ask that question of a voice actor who has dealt with both, and also who actively has other auditions out with the potential of your universe right now. Like I'm in the balance for a couple of big projects on both of them. Like I love them both. I love them both. I have no. It's whoever bids higher. No, it's whoever hires me first. No, I honestly on a kid level, I always kind of baseline it to that from where I was as a kid fan.
Yeah.
It's funny how partisan we get made to be because of competition. I think it's actually healthy. And even the comic book writers they had a few here and there's, but like, if you think about DC and Marvel and their history, they encouraged each other because they were part of a mass market that was really feeding a need. And I think that be it Stan Lee or be it Bob Kane, whatever, whoever you're in love with. Batman is an awesome character, man.
Yeah.
But so is Spider-Man, and so are all these other parts of both universes. I think they both serve really unique purposes, and because of that, they offer another alternative. Plus, I think what they've done in being competitive is inspired a whole new world of alternative world comics. Because you see Invincible taking off, you see the boys and all the boys, even the spin-offs taking off. What was that, Generation B?
Gen Z. Yeah,
Z.
I know what you
Where
mean.
I was in a Bible movie recently. I can have every excuse.
I mean, they're also dope, man.
They are, and I love that there's that kind of content being created. I had this long talk with my kid yesterday about how, and one of my friends from New York, how Broadway used to be this regurgitation of movies made into musicals. Movies, either sitcom type movies, romantic comedies that are made into musicals, and it was easy. So that's what they did. But there was a lack of originality in that being the case, because what wasn't being produced, because those theaters were filled with those, was Hadestown or In the Heights or Hamilton or things like that had this real original appeal. And what I love about what's happening now in the industry is there's a real rich, especially since COVID, a real rich appreciation for original material and an original approach to material that stands the test, which is why I think this incarnation of David, just to take it back to that again, is so important, because it kind of set the bar for anything family friendly that's going to approach that area really high. And the reason that I say that that's important is what I was saying before, money talks. The box office really spoke to the way audiences perceived it, but then also the Rotten Tomatoes popcorn meter spoke to that as well. It was 98%, was the highest rated family film of 2025 on the level of audience appreciation, and the critics actually got up to 78%, which I thought was fascinating, because they would consider it a faith-based film, and they usually they dump on those. But I do think there's a desire for that, just like there's a desire for new comic book material. There's also a desire for new family-friendly, faith-based stuff, and I think there's room for everybody. It doesn't have to be this or that, and that's what I love. Bring it back to voiceover. It's what I love about doing voiceover is it's not fixed pie. There's only so many characters in the Marvel universe or in the DC cinematic universe that are going to be cast. Yeah, are they probably all going to go on screen to superstars or people who've been working in the business that probably deserve it? Yeah, they are. But the voiceover community side of it is wide open. There's a breadth and depth of cartoon and comic book characters. There's also different platforms. Like I said voiceover in video games before, because that's really where I'm at almost all the time. You can count on me doing something. I'm in some AAA and it's because I have fun, and I really go into those worlds. Nice. And I think what's cool about that is if you don't get to do it on the cartoon side or the cinematic side, there's always games, which is fun too. So there's always a cool. I was just watching something yesterday with Tom Hanks's brother. I think his name is Jim. Forgive me if I'm wrong. It could be Bill. It's something very American-y like that. But he started doing all the toys and video games because Tom couldn't do it. It just wasn't a time permitting thing because of his film scheduling. And he became the voice of Woody for video games and rides and all of this. And it's his whole existence. He's been doing it since the Toy Story
franchise started.
Since the franchise started. So that's a whole other career. And I love that about VO because it really lets the kid in you play if you've got the equipment to play with. If you have the tools to act in all those venues, you can do it.
Let's get it. Now, all right, two more questions. If you could narrate any other epic historical or biblical figure next, who would it be?
That's a great question. Wow. Daniel, the book of Daniel. There's a lot of wild stuff in the book of Daniel. And the Daniel prophet is an amazing figure. He's like unto David in that he really has a heart after God. Is taken away in the diaspora, the first diaspora to Babylon into Persia. And, we have a lot going on with Persia right now. That's what it is. It's exactly where he would have gone. And there was so much prophetic stuff that's meaningful to even like the age we live in right now on a scriptural level that happens in the book of Daniel. Plus, there's also these other awesome elements that I think would make a great film or a great animation. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. And that's Daniel in the Lion's Den. You're dealing with that. And also you've got, there's another great story in that of the, excuse me, the fourth man in the fire. His three buddies refused to worship the pagan king, and they won't bow down before anyone but the Hebrew God. And so they throw him into this brazen bull, essentially this furnace. And during that happening, they see a fourth man in the fire. Nobody's being consumed by the flames. And they see a fourth man in the fire, and he looks like the Son of Man. And that's like obviously messianic prophecy. Yeah. So Daniel's got all this really cool stuff in it. I'd love to do that.
Really? There we go. Oh man, he got me excited. Yeah. Angel, you listening?
Okay, I just pitched the movie of the Book of Daniel. Somebody else.
Angel, let's get it. Let's make it happen. Now, final one.
You got it.
When audiences leave David and hear Samuel's voice echoing in their minds, what do you hope they feel?
Oh, inspired and hopeful. And I want them to be affirmed in who they are, that there's a purpose for their lives, especially little ones. I want young men and women to leave the theaters inspired and entertained, but also uplifted, knowing there's a purpose for their lives, and that just like David, they could be out there having adventures, and they can slay their lions and their bears, and they can slay their Goliaths and take what's rightfully theirs and become the kings and queens that they are.
Ooh. You know what? I lied. Let me ask you this now. If they could remember one emotion from your performance, what should it be?
Hope. Because I feel like that's the one thing that comes across that I didn't get chills. I'm trying to be modest here, but I really loved what they did on the level of building the scene and the moment. There is a moment when Samuel reaches down and puts his hand on David's shoulder, and you see his thumb in a very specific way. My kids joke, they're like, "Dad, they got your hands just right." And I'm like, "My hands don't." They didn't do hand capture, kid. But he's got his hand on his shoulder in a reassuring manner, affirming him. And David says, "But I'm just a shepherd." And he said, "A shepherd," and he laughs through it because it's such a kid thing to say. It's like, you're disqualifying yourself, but you're actually, it's funny. The very thing that's disqualifying you, it's the thing that qualifies you. He says a shepherd is exactly who the people need. They're lost and astray. That's exactly who they need. So I that hopeful emotion. Yeah, I hope people watch this and they leave with hope. And I hope they watch the entire film, because all of the moments, it's really David's story, but everybody plays into it. That it's our story. That's one thing I'd leave you with, and I'd say is, the Bible's not finished. The book of Acts is still being written. And so if that's your story, and if that's part of your life, then let this be an encouragement to you that David did something that we should be able to do as well. And that's stand up in the face of darkness, and stand up in the face of those who would call themselves our enemies, those who would come to kill, steal, and destroy, and actually really bring light and follow the light. And that's the only way you can bring light, is if you follow the light. And that's the only way you can have real peace in your life.
Agreed, man. Brian, let me say thank you for bringing depth, gravity, and humanity to a story that has already impacted millions. So folks, if you haven't seen David yet, listen, right there, visit the Angel Studios website at angel.com, right? You can also go check them out on X at Angel Studios Inc. You can also go snap a pic right there, take you straight over there for real, because this is epic storytelling. This is scale. This is voice performance at its highest level. You heard? So again, go see David, bring your family, bring your friends, experience the story on the big screen if you have the chance. And again, Brian, we salute you for stepping into prophecy and delivering power. Appreciate y'all. And a shout out to my man Big Chris, for the hookup. And the Angel Studios, we dig your man. Everybody tune in. Hasta la próxima. Wepa! Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.shop and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.